Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for our first event for 2022. I'm Dr. Susan Feddix, one of the founding members of Women in Research Ireland. And so for today's discussion, we're going to explore both positive and negative interference that can occur with your career progression as a researcher. So when we succeed in furthering our career, we may need changes to our location or colleagues or increased responsibilities. And we should be celebrating these advances, yet without the proper resources to support our emotional needs, we can experience stress, anxiety, and the feeling of overwhelm, which is in direct contrast to these experiences and these achievements. So in today's event, this is the third of a 4-part mental health workshop series for researchers, which is sponsored by the Royal Society of Chemistry, Inclusion and Diversity Fund. At the end, we will take questions from the audience. So type your questions into the chat box during this event. And since we are recording, if you can please keep your video off and your audio muted, that would be great. So today, I'm delighted to introduce 2 scientists that I'm proud to call my friends. I met Dr. Robin Wu 10 years ago, and we are both founding members of the International Chapter of Graduate Women in Science. Robin is a biologist who has worked for notable organizations such as the United States Food and Drug Association, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Dr. Christina Cicchetti and I met when she was a visiting scientist at Trinity College Dublin in the School of Biochemistry. Christina has completed an internship under the highly competitive Erasmus program. Then she earned her PhD from the prestigious Marie Curie Innovative Training Network, and she is currently working as a research scientist in Milan, Italy. Throughout their careers, both Robin and Christina have published peer-reviewed articles and have successfully secured funding for their work. So as such shining lights in science, they surely have knowledge and tools to share with our audience to help navigate career progression. So before we start the discussion, let me ask a poll question for the audience. And I want everyone to keep in mind that the answers are anonymous, so no one will see how you're responding. So for the first poll question, I'll put it up. So the question is, have you experienced negative emotions regarding changes to your career? So this can mean feelings of depression, stress, or anxiety, or perhaps frustration, confusion that has resulted from graduation, or perhaps a promotion within your institute, relocation to a new area, or perhaps even to a new country, and increased responsibility, which can be managing young researchers. So have you experienced negative emotions regarding changes to your career? Your options are yes, no, and I'm not sure. So it seems like everyone who's here has answered. So let me end and then I will show. So it seems we have, it's very clear that for the audience, 100% of you are in the right place for today to share these emotions. And so let me first get started then with, all right, so also as we begin this conversation, if you feel safe in sharing, you can type into the chat some of these emotions that you felt while you've been going through your transition, such as graduation, and we can address them during the conversation. And as I mentioned, we'll address questions at the end for the 2 panelists, Robin and Christina. So now a warm welcome to Robin and Christina. So as a way to introduce yourselves, briefly explain your career thus far, and Christina, we'll start with you.
Thank you for your introduction, and I'm very happy to be here. So as you mentioned, I graduated in Rome, in Italy, both my undergrad and master's degrees in chemistry, and then I decided to move to the UK for a 6-month internship in a pharmaceutical company. And I did that thanks to an Erasmus scholarship. Then I decided to stay in the UK for my PhD at Imperial College London in biochemistry and structural biology. during the PhD, I traveled a lot thanks to the Marie Curie fellowship, and I went to Ireland where I met Susan, and stayed there for a few months, and then I went to Cambridge, and I had the opportunity to travel a lot also for lots of conferences and workshops in France and Germany and so on. And then I finished my PhD very recently. In fact, I graduated just a few months ago, and I moved back to Italy, so to Milan in particular, to the European Institute of Oncology, where I'm working as a postdoctoral researcher in cancer research.
Great, thanks. Robin? Oh, Robin has a graphic, right?
Okay, hi everyone. I'm delighted to be with you. Thank you, Susan, for your invitation. I think, why don't you go ahead and put the graphic?
Yep.
Okay, I start this graphic with my undergrad biology because I started working. My life as a scientist at Duke University was sort of rocky at first because my mom passed away and my dad was estranged, so I was alone. And then Kennedy was shot, and I ended up getting married and having a baby after a sophomore year. But I had a lot of networking to support myself and my little family by knocking on doors. And you can see that the first 2 years I had several little jobs, but each little job built me as a scientist, and I learned a lot of things got a lot of experience to decide what I liked and what I didn't like, and to develop the support system that I wanted to use in the future, like Dr. Klopfer, who was my freshman biology teacher, and he's still alive, guys. He's 93 years old. But I moved on when my husband needed to go to Canada for his graduate studies. And I find that the first half of my life was involved in following my husband and then the second husband to be there. And so while I was an independent scientist, I was very dependent to my spouses in developing my career and trying to make it fit into their schedules and their places. So you see that the time frames moved to different places, from moving from North Carolina to Canada, LA, and Pennsylvania, and back to LA, all before I even became a professional. So the message is in the column that's titled by education. You don't have to hurry. It takes a while. And in fact, I was 45 years when I finished my education. And I managed to get through there because I had husbands who supported my development as a scientist, but that didn't really help my career. I finally had to move East Coast back to where I started in Virginia to begin my professional development. And I left from being a biologist. I had started from a biology pre-med major back to various positions in professionally in the AAAS, the American Association for Advancement Science, as the meeting director, first woman in all of their directors. And I had a wonderful time there for a while until I got a pink slip. And that was one of those stressors that I had to take care of, but I used networking. And so the support system is developed by networking with various professors who supported me. Male scientists were my mentors throughout my career until I found a career in FDA when I had a female scientist who was my mentor at FDA in the Center for Food and Nutrition. And then I finally went through there after these 56 years. I retired and met Susan and developed the GWIS International chapter. And now I'm working as a personal injury specialist in a small law firm. I'm using my biology again. All of this is about my science in my life, but we'll talk about later. So I'm a pre-med biologist who ended up being a retired personal injury law scientist, and now a little theater where wardrobe and costumer as a nice volunteer would find peace and found myself, and it all is connected. The message is that I took my path and followed it when I had to follow, and I've really loved my life, and I've actually gone into some wonderful jobs, and it's been quite an adventure. Let's talk more.
Thank you. You make retirement, you say retirement, but you're quite busy, which is wonderful to see. I wouldn't call it retirement. You just keep going. So definitely both of you, having explained that you've had various positions and moved different locations, you have a lot to give us for the conversation. So first off, I'll start by asking, so out of all the experiences that you both had, which are so varied, which is wonderful, even though you're both scientists, what has been the most difficult transition emotionally and why? So I was going to say, Christina, can we start with you?
Yeah, definitely. Such an exciting and inspiring career path, Robin. So yeah, basically I decided to move abroad for my career and to learn more, to learn another language, and especially to work in a different field. I graduated in chemistry, so I decided to go in a pharmaceutical company where I worked mainly in cell biology, so something completely different. So I just wanted to challenge myself and learn more and more. So I decided to move, and was quite young when I did that, and it was very exciting, but it was also a bit challenging because I was basically alone. So I'd left my family and my boyfriend back in Italy. So I just did it all by myself, let's say. Well, it may sound a bit silly, but I think that if in the audience there's somebody who moved to another country with a different language, they know how difficult that is. So at the beginning, so even the most basic things like opening, I don't know, a bank account or going to the physician, it was very difficult because I didn't know how to say, things. So I didn't know how to, I don't know, explain my symptoms if I had to go to the doctor, So that was quite challenging. But I guess that wasn't the most difficult transition that I did, because I was very excited, and in my head it was just for 6 months, so it was a little bit of an adventure, and then I would just go back to my old life, let's say. But then I decided to stay for the PhD, so I decided to stay in London. So all of a sudden, from just being 6 months and of, I don't know, long distance relationship and stuff, is all of a sudden it became 3 or 4 years. So that was quite challenging, I'd say. So that kind of change of my mindset and being oh well, I live here now, I live in the UK and I live by myself, away from my family and my boyfriend. So that was it.
Yeah, understandably that you're leaving your support system and, as you said, just trying to, the self-care that you need to buy the proper food and to tell the doctor that can be all distressing when it's a foreign language. Robin, do you know what's been your most difficult transition emotionally?
Well, most of my career was in English, but I did actually pick up some Spanish when I finally became a professional. My biggest troubling transition was leaving the bits and pieces of pre-professional. I did a lot of research, real science, as I call it, and I felt that I owed it to my professors to become a lab scientist or a field scientist. I did my research on growth factors and field research with my first husband in ecology and naturalist research and trying population and community research. But I had to leave the labs and I had to leave science to move out of my former self as a dependent wife to find my own life and to find myself. So moving across the country, I got a job when I lost my main job at the UCLA Symposia when I was developing Symposia for 4 years, and I networked tens of thousands of scientists every year and created many conferences, and it was very important. And I learned about all sorts of research approaches, and I actually helped the development of biotech industry. But I had to leave that because one of my professors, who was a mentor, did something illegal. And I felt it was against my conscience to keep on working there, and I left. I went across the country after trying to put together my own little career by developing my private, personally held conference consultancy. And I wrote a note to the American Association of Advancement of Science, new chair of the board, who I had met running my symposiums. And I said, congratulations, you're the chair of the board. I really hope that you're going to work towards the development of science. And he passed my name on to the director of the meetings, and he was getting ready to retire and he had some heart problems. So he was looking for a deputy, and I got an invite via email. Do you want to come to Washington and see me? I'd like to have your help. You seem to be perfectly set up for this. And I was really scared. This was life alone. I asked my husband, is it okay if I leave? And he said, sure. I had that support. And I had this mentor waiting for me in DC who I had already worked with. It was a known factor. And I became that first female director of meetings when he retired. And for me, it was a discovery that I could do it by myself as an independent woman, but it was scary. After I was pink slipped because the AAAS needed some money to build their new building, and I was fired. I lost my job. I was actually blown away. I actually had bought my own house. I had no way to support, and I was independent from my husband, even though I was still married. And I wrote again, hey, are you interested in working together, to a man who I worked with at AAAS as an organization. We organized a program in that particular conferences set. And he said, well, I could use some help over at Georgetown. And that's how I got my job and moved forward. But that was so difficult. And I was very scared building my own career, and things kept falling out from under me. And it's challenging, and it's emotionally very stressful.
Well, definitely, because you feel like you have good footing. And then, as you say, you know, the AAAS decided they just needed to shift money, had nothing to do with how you were performing or the needs or how the department was going. It's just people above need to shuffle money around. And when you have that confidence finally built after being, worried, because we're always moving on to something better and different, that you have the insecurities, whether it'll work or not. And then to have it taken from you, I can imagine that it will help. But then obviously when you get into all the other positions that you see, as you're working well into retirement, so I wouldn't call it retirement, that you've done, you've done very well at building up your self-esteem and showing everyone and yourself, most importantly, how successful you can be in the positions with the tasks that you're given. So I'll ask both of you. I just want to say, Robin, we're having a bit of feedback. I don't know with your volume, if you can lower it a little bit. I mean, to make sure, you can still hear us. But what I will ask is, having gone through those, understanding now the difficulties, the emotionally with those transitions, what advice do you now realize that would have helped you during the most difficult time? So Robin, and then I'll ask Christina. Robin, what's the best advice that you wish you could give yourself now from back then?
Well, though my husband was seemingly supportive, I would say that it's impossible to keep a relationship 3,000 miles apart. And even though I had tried to set that up and maintain it, it was impossible. He stayed at UCLA and I was here at DC. So long distance relationships are very difficult to maintain for a long time. But I developed other support by other male scientists who are my mentors. And I think that the other thing is that you can always have mentors wherever, and they can, whether they're males or females, it's beyond marriage, and then you can be your own self and work with people.
Yeah, definitely. And for as far as long distance relationships, because Christina, you mentioned that, but it also, and I've experienced it as well. Yeah, you say 3,000 miles. For me, it was 500 miles. That was that didn't work. But what I would say is, I have seen it work with people. So there are couples that are very committed. And what I've seen, Christina, you can attest to this, that yours is working out. You have to have, commitment of communication, and just that you're not going to back down with that. And there's an extra layer added to it that you have to have. But honestly, I myself, just like you, Robin, I learned long distance is not something that I would want and did not work for me. But then there are other people that it can work for. So it's a matter of realizing who you are and finding, you say, the proper support, the proper partner for that. So Christina, what advice would you give yourself from back then?
Yeah, so that's quite interesting. So we did long distance relationship for 4 years. And we were kind of 10,000 kilometers apart. So it was challenging, definitely, but it worked. And we were quite committed to make it work, and we actually made it. So I mean, it can happen. I'm not saying it's easy, but it can happen. So I mean, I guess it's a few different things I would say to myself. So during difficult times, I tend to kind of doubt myself a lot, and kind of doubt my choices. And, I was always afraid I'd made a mistake by moving and, being alone and all of that. And I realized I was thinking a lot about the past, and I was dwelling on the past, and I was also kind of thinking a lot about the future. I guess the society sometimes it puts a lot of pressure on us, because we feel like we need to know where we're going, and we have to have our career path just laid in front of us, and we have to know everything. We have to know our goal, and we have to know everything. But lots of things actually happen by serendipity. So we don't expect that. It's completely unexpected. So I guess I would say to myself to kind of accept that you can make mistakes, and that's okay. And actually, sometimes it's even good to make mistakes, because they can give you unexpected outcomes and unexpected opportunities. And so it's quite exciting on one hand. And focus a lot on the present. So instead of focusing on the good things you have, because I was alone. I mean, I wasn't alone. That's what I was trying to say. Like I was alone in one sense because I didn't have my family and my boyfriend, but I actually, in every step of the way, I actually met a lot of like great people who became my family over there. So I had lots of friends, had lots of things to do. Like I was always kind of moving, always doing lots of things, like exciting things. And even when I spent only a few months in a place, I had so I was very lucky to meet amazing people who spent time with me, and they showed me the place, and they showed me the city and so on. So that's another thing, like just focusing on the good thing about the present and forget about the past and the future and all the worries. So yeah.
And even now, there's neuroscience research that showed thinking positively and focusing on the positive things is almost like a muscle. The more you work it, the more it will overtake it. You will burning off fat. You can burn off, negative loops of thinking. So that's excellent advice, to just keep focusing on positive. Some days, especially when you're a student and you're broke and you're tired and long day, sometimes it's just like, I have a roof over my head and I have a hot meal in front of me. And silence. This is good. So even little things like that, being grateful in the moment, that can help. So yeah, good advice for both of you now. So then I'll start with Robin. What support systems help the most? You had shown us, different people in your lives, but in family, and also that we know about pets. But in general, for example, you talk about the volunteering with the costumes. So how are those supports helping you with your career?
Well, I would say that first of all, family will always be a good support system, husbands included, but sometimes they fail you and they give you some interesting challenges. And then so do mentors. Sometimes they fail you and they become dishonest or whatever, and they pass away. And you have those challenges. They're not there forever, but it's always to be open to new friends. As Christina says, there are people everywhere to work with and to enjoy, and life is beautiful. So you should keep together. But I think that my doggies, I have two here sound asleep beside me, and they're very supportive. They work with me every day. And the volunteerism, I think that I chose the costuming at the little theater because it gives me great joy. It allows me to be creative. Just like in the lab, I could create little experiments by developing Victorian dresses. I'm sewing dresses for the Bronte sisters for a little film. And that's a new adventure. I'm learning about the theater arts and meeting young people. It keeps me alive and young, and it's fabulous. But I look back, and my career, my support systems kept me going. It started with my dad believing me and teaching me to believe in myself. And I kept on going. And I thank my dad in heaven for doing that.
Christina?
Yeah. Again, like building a network wherever you are, that's super important. So it was the most important thing for me. So having a few people I could rely on everywhere I went, and it was amazing. So that actually was my family in every single country, in every single place I lived in. Well, yeah, the other thing is to find something that makes you feel good, which can be like volunteering, for example. I also did a little bit of like volunteering for a charity when I was in London. Or I don't know, like joining a gym, or finding a hobby, or finding something else, something that makes you feel good at the end of the day. Like if you have a hard day, you can kind of cling to that. Another thing, I mean, it was funny because I said my boyfriend and I were committed to make it work long distance. So another thing that helps a lot was to keep in touch with my family and friends, because sometimes you can just, I mean, I wouldn't say forget about them, but like you're kind of busy with your life and you kind of don't think too much about what happens, back there. But I actually always found ways to share time with them. So just like a couple of, super quick examples. So my boyfriend and I used to watch series on Netflix every night. So an episode every night. And there was something just for the two of us, even though it wasn't, I don't know, like a 20-minute episode, and then we would just, say goodnight and go on with our lives. But that was really good because it was something that was just meant to be ours. And it was a way to share time with him, even, far apart. And another thing was when I mean, that was during the pandemic, but I decided to get up quite early in the morning and just exercise in the morning over Skype with my family, because I was actually trying to convince them to be more active. So we would connect over Skype at 9 a.m. in London. That was 10 a.m. in Italy, and it was super helpful in that, during that time of lockdown and stuff. So I mean, it's again, it's challenging, but I guess, like with a little bit of creativity, you can find a way to even connect with other people that are far away and are important. They're still like a support system for you.
Yeah, definitely friends and families that are already established, as you say. And then Robin mentioned, new people. And Christina, you talked about meeting new people that you just click with and connect with. And one thing I was actually realizing as you guys were talking, and yeah, people, pets, but I was even thinking of nature or just your environment, because, I was at 18, I moved into New York City, and well, I grew up right around there and I loved it. And I remember when I was applying to graduate school, and actually we just recently found out Rob and I were at Georgetown at the same time, but we didn't know each other back then. When I was applying to graduate school and I ended up going to Georgetown. But part of my application, when you had to write the essay, they want to know why specifically Georgetown, of course, the program. But I said, well, I love living in New York City, and Washington, D.C. would be an exciting city. And actually, one of the first times I went out to a pub with the professors, one of them brought that up with me, that he remembers that from my essay, that's how well I knew myself. And he was like, this is somebody we want in the department, because she already knew like how to deal with stress and just what environment worked well with her. And the funny thing is that then I switched, eventually moving to North Carolina and having all that fresh air and all that. I've now gone the other way, and I like visiting cities, but then leaving them, the big rush of it. So also thinking about that, when you leave work, to create space, perhaps to go to a cafe before you go home, to create space for yourself, perhaps before you start interacting with other people if you need to decompress. That can also help you support yourself and nourish yourself if you're having a day where you're really run down. Think about the environment and the location where you live. Also the weather, do you enjoy the weather where you're going to move? So there's a lot of different options for people to consider when they're thinking about where they live and the lifestyle they're choosing. So now just moving on, what future transitions do you see in your lives? So Christina, let's start. What do you see coming down the pike for you?
Well, that was very difficult to answer, given that I literally just moved into a new position. And so I don't know yet. So again, I'm trying to apply the same advice that I said. I'm not. So I am actually, open to possibilities, but I don't know where life will lead me. And that's fine. Like, I'm happy with that. I wasn't happy back then, but now I learned a bit. So yeah, that's my answer. I don't know.
Robin?
Okay. Well, obviously, I'm really going to retire one of these days, but my daughter and I are going to downsize now that granddaughter is off to vet school and grandson is in college. The two of us are alone and we have fewer animals. And the segue from your mention about moving to a place with good weather sounds good to me, but I don't know. But I'm going to continue my favorite two jobs, mentoring with GWIS and helping young scientists throughout the world in our international and even national GWIS, and also the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture. When I did my sabbatical, I mentored 65 young executives in leadership food safety. So I continue to monitor them and back them up and help them forever because I love developing young people in helping them in their careers and teaching them to see all the options they have in the future. And so I want to keep on opening their lives and to give them great possibilities and to help change the world and make it better. So I'm an optimist and I love to see things develop. I guess I'm a farmer. I like to develop people.
Well, I was going to say, there's no need for you to slow down. You have so much to share and so much to give that you definitely should keep going for as long as good, whether it's with costumes or in science or anything in between. So then also, how are you better prepared for future transitions given your reflections on these past experiences? So, Robin?
I wanted to be a pediatrician when I was starting my education. And I see throughout my career, I've managed to get back into human health, whether I was in the growth factors and the rheumatology lab at UCLA, and to right now in working with personal injury lawsuits, taking care of people using medicine to help them understand what's wrong with them and how they were hurt. And I think I would, I'm so well prepared. I even taught med school at Georgetown, but I think I'm going to stick in the medical field and volunteering. I want to go into hospitals and maybe hold babies in newborn clinics. And there are all sorts of options, but I think I've developed myself and I still want to return back to that little pediatrician in my mind. I may be 12-year-old. I'm still in my head and my heart. I want to help human health.
Yeah, that sounds great. Christina? Yeah, that does sound great. So, I mean, I guess I was thinking about all the difficult times. As I said, there was always kind of doubting myself and thinking about the present, the future, and so on. So I guess the first thing would be to kind of enjoy the present. Don't worry too much about the future. Don't be afraid of making mistakes and taking the opportunities that life gives me. And another thing that I actually realized is, that mental health really matters. And in the past, I wasn't so aware of that. But now I kind of decided that I want to give more space to that, to my mental health. And I want to take care of that a little bit more. Because that also, gave me clarity. So taking care of that more gives clarity, to see where you want to go and to kind of listen to yourself and understand more about yourself. And I guess, it took a lot of time for me to realize that, but if to realize that if I was struggling, it was okay to kind of ask for help, you know, to somebody else, to a mentor, to a friend, but even to kind of a professional. So I guess that's what I'm, you know, why I think I'm now a little bit better prepared to kind of, you know, take all the opportunities in life.
Well, definitely, as with all these transitions, you know, in a relationship or out of a relationship, or transitioning in and out of relationships, in the end, we're all cultivating a relationship with ourselves. So taking these big risks, like I remember when I moved to Europe, you know, my backpack, it had my hard drive with every file, you know, not just scientific, but my personal files. I had 6 months worth of medications, and I just remember that, you know, my life is on my back. And I just remember when I was sitting there waiting at the gate thinking, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. Because I don't, you know, you have short-term contracts, so you don't know how long the run is going to go. And I was moving across an ocean. So seeing how you deal with those, with the confusion and the stress, and how you can talk yourself out of it, and how you can have complete breakdowns and cry about it. You're always there for yourself to get yourself through. So I think that's something we should all keep in mind, is that we're constantly cultivating these relationships with ourselves and getting to know ourselves better. So that way we can navigate, is this a position that I want, or is this the career path that I'm thinking of, you know, whether it's just for the moment or long term. So I was just looking at the questions. I received a question. I'll just say that it's, somebody sent me a question directly, and I'll keep it anonymous, but it says, if you knew what would have happened to your relationship, you know, meaning the long distance, would you have moved, and do you have any regrets? So I can answer that. No, I don't regret at all. My my experience is, if a relationship is meant to be, it will withstand. And as I said, you're in it together and you have strong communications. And to me, if it wasn't the move, there would have been something else that would have had that. And I think for those of us who have gone through different breakups, you'll see little hints that were going on. That my thing is, when I did that move, it was to obtain my PhD, because New York City was way too expensive. So I had to move to North Carolina. And so that was me being my authentic self, that this is what I was meant to do with my life. And financially, I couldn't sustain living in New York City. Plus, I felt done with it anyway. So that was me being my authentic self. And that's just where sometimes you have the fork in the road. And it was not, it wasn't for him, which is perfectly fine. So I didn't regret it at all. You know, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. You know, it's a lot of that. Yeah, right. A month or two later was my birthday, so it wasn't fun. But you know, you get through it, and that's why I said you get to know yourself better, and you get to be stronger from it. And then it helps you focus for better relationships for the future, which will definitely happen. Do either of you have anything you want to add to that about relationships or regrets?
I guess I agree. Okay, I agree with you. So like, as you said earlier, like, you kind of need to cultivate your relationship with yourself. And first, I would say, you know, before the relationship with somebody else. And so I'd say that if you feel like, I don't have any regrets. So obviously my relationship did work out, but even if it didn't, like, I don't think I would have had any regrets, because I did what I felt was right for me. So yeah, I agree.
I'll pipe in, and I totally agree with both of you. And but I will say that I'm limited. I married two men I loved. They were both scientists, but they were my friends. And my daughter said, "Mom, you're not a wife. You are you." and just find yourself. And I agreed with her. And I was used to doing my own thing. And coming here to DC by myself felt good. I opened myself up to the world and international programs and all of the science. And I could see the world and I could embrace it because I had my arms open and they were unencumbered. And I felt I was meant to be a single woman advancing science along with my arms open to help other people. And I just love that having the opportunity to help Americans in working with in the government, FDA. My dad was in the Navy and he taught me to serve the public. And this was an opportunity. I could just drop everything and move forward. And it was terrific, but I did it through networking. Dr. Crawford and I were working together at Georgetown, and that networking allowed me to go into the government because he became the director and the commissioner of FDA. So I love my life. I don't regret anything I've done, and certainly married those two guys who are my friends, but I'm happy being me.
And definitely, Robin, what you're saying about networking, you know, when you are your authentic self and people see that and people appreciate that about you, that's when they'll keep you in mind. They're like, oh, you know what, Robin would be the best person, you know, if we're creating this new position or if we're doing that. And the same, you know, with Christina, that anyone is listening in the audience, that you shine through when you are your authentic self and doing what you're meant to do. And so that's where people will remember. So that's, I think, the most important thing to keep track of, cultivating this relationship with yourself. But also, Robin, you brought up a good point, saying the advice that your daughter was giving you, you know, especially in the sciences, we have to just be so strong and be independent and do it ourselves and go, get up with the alarm and keep going. That sometimes I know I forget to be in the receiving mode, you know, to ask for help. You know, even if it's just going out to dinner with somebody, you know, meeting a friend for coffee because you want to talk, because you're just having a rough day, or even if you want to just ask them, can you bring over dinner? You know, see, lots of times people are busy and can't do it, but at least asking for help to see that you are supported and that you can get nurtured, you know, by others if you're just at your lowest. And also seeing that there are people around you that care about you. So are there any other questions from the audience? Oh, I see. Well, there's one here. It just popped up. I'll jump into this one because it was just put in. Thank you all for sharing your experiences. I would like to ask, have you struggled with taking a break to rest or get perspective on your current stage of life instead of charging forward with your career? Do either of you, Christina or Robin, want to take that, talk about taking a break versus just go to the next job?
Yeah, I did struggle. Because as I said, like you feel like you have to, you know, go. But I guess that one of the things that I will try to kind of improve in the future, to just, you know, take some time to pause and think, instead of being like busy all the time. So yeah, I did struggle.
I had the problem with the transition going from my husband's PhD and postdoc into going to his first teaching position at the University of Pennsylvania. I said, aha, I can take a rest. So we lived in New Jersey. My 7-year-old went to a Quaker school. And and it's kind of laughable, for here I am trying to take a break. I was giving lectures on ground squirrel behavior to second graders. I walked through the woods sticking goo to measure the insects in the winter to see how the insects were in the woods, and just doing some little projects I figured out, and it's crazy. So then I think I've got to be a science anyway. So I applied for a vet school position taking care of the animal room, and they told me, hey, Robin, you're the best person qualified. You've taken care of animals for years and work on research. However, you're a woman and you have a child who may get sick and you may not be able to come to work regularly. So we decided to give the job to a man. Oliver, I decided to stop the break. I stopped to seriously go back to school and get my undergraduate, finish that up, and move on and being a PhD student, because I wanted to be my own boss. I didn't like that whole mentality. And that's that little anti-feminist issue. I decided to rebel. I decided to no longer take the break, but to become what I meant to be. There were lots of warning signals, but I got that hint. Thank you, vet school.
Yeah, and that feeds in because Leslie's going to ask a question that just popped up in the chat about mentors.
Yeah, so Suzanne sent this question, and she say, thank you so much for just inspiring session. I could relate to a lot of what was said today, and it really resonated with me. So just out of interest, would you have noticed any difference in mentors depending on whether you're male or female?
Well, I think that all my mentors were males. I grew up with a great dad who was wonderful. He was a great mentor as a dad. And I grew up with boys. I played football. I felt comfortable with them. So it was fine. My female mentor in FDA was fabulous. Each and every one of them gave me the freedom to be me, and I felt totally empowered until some sort of problem with budgetary problem. But I don't think one is better than the other. I find that young women these days are looking towards other women to help them, but I don't think you necessarily have to get a female mentor. Everybody is good. And I think that it was good for these guys to help me too, because there's a different kind of relationship than they're used to. And that was wonderful for both of us to develop. And I've learned a lot from them.
Christina?
Actually, I was trying to think about the answer now. There's a difference for me between mentors and, I don't know, like managers or supervisors or, you know, your boss. So I had mainly female managers, let's say, like supervisors and stuff. And most of them were great. So they were amazing and they helped me a lot. It helped, you know, developing my career, and, you know, like I became a better, I don't know, person and professional thanks to them. But I wouldn't call all of them my mentors. Because I don't know, like I think that a mentor is somebody who is not necessarily your direct, you know, line manager, let's say, but is somebody who is inspiring. I don't know, like you can take it as a role model, right? Or is this inspiring you? And you know, so I had both male and female mentors, and they were both great, and they both helped me a lot by, you know, just you know, trying to make me understand what I wanted to be and how I wanted to be like, and, you know, helping in my most difficult times and stuff. So in that sense, I didn't find any difference.
And also, you can have mentors that are not even in the same department, you know, that can just be similar. You know, if you're in biochemistry, somebody in physics, you know, it depends who you click with, a lot of that. Robin, well, have you finished up, and then I'll do the poll and then we'll end. Yeah.
Okay, I will say that I'm looking at these male mentors I've had. The better ones, the best ones were those who grew up with women. They had daughters and happy family-wise, and they got along with women. The last mentor I had girl dogs, and I think that having experience living with women is a plus for male mentors, and they are better mentors.
Yeah, they can understand the equity that's necessary.
Yeah.
So thanks to you both for now. Let me just finish for the people that are left on the call. We'll just finish with a poll just to see how the event went. So we're just asking here, keep in mind that the questions are anonymous, so we won't see how you're responding. So did you learn something new or gain insight at today's event that can help with your emotions during career transition? So this is, we're talking about a lot of stress and your relationship with yourself. And so the answers are yes, no, or I'm not sure. Just wondering if you learned something new today or gained insight with the conversation we were having in the questions. So I'll end that. I see a lot of people have answered, and then I will show, and we see that there's a big percent that seems like some people got something out of it today. So that's very pleasant to hear, because that's what we're always trying to do. So just to finish off, I want to thank for sure. Oh, let me stop sharing. Absolutely thank Robin and Christina for sharing their experiences and for helping everyone who's on the line. And yeah, thanks for taking the time, because you're both, we're in 3 different time zones. Robin's on the East Coast, USA, so it's just rounding 2 p.m. Christina's in Italy rounding 8 p.m. and here in Dublin at 7 p.m. So we got it all covered. So thanks to everybody. I really appreciate you guys participating and sharing your stories. So thanks. And I'll stop the recording.